Good day, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I'm Edward, but I'm guessing most of you listening already know that. But if you don't, congratulations. Fun fact of the day, the guy whose voice you're hearing right now is named Edward. And so lately I've been tossing something around in my brain, lifestyle related, and it's something that's oh boy, it's old. It's been around forever and a day. But for some of you, it may be considered new. And these are the four pillars of DS. Before we get started, I'm just curious. I mean, you can say it out loud if you want to, wherever you are. I won't hear you. It's one of the beauties of a podcast is I won't hear you when you say things out loud or even hear an eye roll. But I'm just curious before we, discuss the four pillars, if you would take a second and if you don't know, or even if you think you do, refresh your mind and kind of think what are the four pillars of DS? So we'll give you just a quick second. There we go. Second is up. So if you don't know, the four pillars of DS are trust, respect, honesty, and communication. Now, I know there's somebody out there, so we'll go and we'll start with Master Monster Cock's question. No, sex is not one of the four pillars of DS. I am sorry, Massive Cock. It is just not. In fact, many people have amazing DS or BDSM or a combination thereof, or even just kinktastic relationships that don't involve sex. They're asexual people. So yeah, sex is not a four pillar. It's not even really a necessary thing to have in order to have a lifestyle relationship. Now, for me personally, I love sex. I believe I'm highly sexual and in a relationship, want it, need it, all that good stuff. But it also comes with a unique um, thing that makes Edward. I don't know whether you would want to, what adjective you would put there, but I will let you decide at home after you hear this. I consider myself highly sexual and love it. However, I have not had sex since 2016. So what is that? It is 7 years. So I guess we could use that. Is it Marilyn Monroe movie that had the 7 year itch? Um, really, there's no itch, which is probably good because if you do have an itch down there that's sexual related, I think that would be time to see a medical provider because that would be indicative of something extra going on down there that I don't think any of us would want. Anyway, but getting back to it, I mean, sex is not a part, one of the pillars of DS, and the other thing that I think might surprise many of you is that consent is not considered part of the four pillars, which, if you're new, probably does seem odd. Like, why isn't consent part of this? And the big thing is that consent is, in a way, assumed when it comes to the four pillars, because if you don't have consent, you don't have BDSM. There's consent has to be there for it to happen because if you're doing it without consent, then what you're doing is not part of the lifestyle. It just isn't. So that's why consent is not there. Now, these four pillars kind of came to my mind because I had a interesting experience, which um, I think if I was female would be something that would happen much more frequently. But hey, life is an equal opportunity place, and it happened to me. It's happened a few times. Um, so I had I had boobs, unsolicited boobs from somebody I have never spoken to, emailed, texted, DM'd, commented on a photo. They didn't comment on mine. They've never clicked the like button, love button, depending on the social media platform. There's no interactions whatsoever. Just whoop, hey, here's a DM, and hey, it's a DM from somebody I don't know. Open it up, and wow, we have boobs. And it wasn't just one boob shot; it was, a smorgasbord of booby selfies. Which now there is part of me, I will admit, being being me, I love boobs. However, I don't just like want to see random boobs. I'm not a guy who would say go to a gentleman's club or strip joint, depending on how you say it or where you are in the world. Or I'm sure that where they speak proper English rather than American English, they probably have a different name for those facilities. But even then, that's something that even as a young kid in college, just out of college, and having friends getting married at that point in time, where gentlemen's entertainment was part of the bachelor party, it just was never interesting to me because, like, yeah, boobs are great, but like, I need to connect to the person behind the boobs to care about seeing the boobs. So, anyways, so I had unsolicited, these show up in my DMs, and I'm sure many of you, uh, ladies have unsolicited, especially if you are on lifestyle or open to lifestyle posting on your social media. You have men send you pictures of their gentleman sausages randomly and inappropriately with no explanation. But when that happened, that kind of started the four pillars thoughts in my head. Like, this is totally like it's being disrespectful. It's not violating communication. I mean, really, it's not an honest way to open a conversation. I mean, granted, I know there are so many men out there that would have started salivating like one of Pavlov's dogs when a woman sent these selfies to them, and I'm sure there are many men who would have jumped at the chance to engage with this person behind the unsolicited, uh, you know, introduction. I was trying to find a clever way to say that, and it just wasn't coming out clever. But it was just, yeah, it was just not, in my opinion, not a fun thing to say. And I actually responded, nicely and expressed that that's just not how I roll. And while I appreciate them sending those pictures to me, it was not going to lead to a conversation and wish them well. And so it started the four pillars thoughts, like I said, and then the next thought in my mind is, but what is behind, the obviously men are, famous for doing it in the lands of the internet. But what is behind people sending, pictures of their naughty bits or their goodies to strangers? Why is this happening, and why is it in a way I don't want to say allowed isn't. I mean, if we have our DMs on, it's who knows what can roll in. I mean, it can be anything and everything. But we need to keep our DMs on to connect with actual people that we want to connect with. So what is behind this? And so it turns out there is some research behind the unsolicited naughty bit shots, and sort of our on the internet, the thing that has brought us is more of that instant gratification culture, and sort of kind of could be a part of it. We place an order on Amazon, and depending on where you're located, you can get your Amazon order the same day. Order it in the morning and have it on your porch when you get home from work. So we have an instant gratification world. The media pushes us for instant gratification. All the commercials, buy it now, or even if you see one of my postings where I promote this podcast, you'll see something, a call to action that says listen now or subscribe now, now. So even I, in what I do, um, take advantage of our need for instant gratification. I would love to say that I'm immune to that need, and I am not. Um, in fact, as I'm kind of talking to you right now, I'm also mulling in my head what I want for dinner, and I don't feel like cooking. So I am probably going to head out for some instant gratification when it comes to my dinner tonight. By the way, I'm thinking pizza and a salad, which will give me leftovers for a couple days. So that's where I'm at there. But the instant gratification side of the behavior, it gives attention. Even negative attention is attention. And perhaps in the case of the the lady that sent me her selfies, um, she is going to find that I would say more men than not are going to validate and give her positive feedback, and also there's got to be some sort of excitement for sending pictures like that if that's your GM. Mr. Body Positivity Issues here, who's speaking to you. If I sent a sexy selfie or a picture, even to like a partner, a little sexting type of thing, I would, rather than be excitement, I would, because of my body positivity issues, I would be scared to death that they were going to find it revolting, comes to mind. So for me, that's not how my brain works, but obviously a lot of people are into that, the instant gratification and the attention seeking that it brings. The other thing, especially this part of it, kind of applies to the boys because most of the boys sending the headshots, if you will, out there are typically claiming to be on the dominant side of things. So you have that instant gratification need, and you also have a self-identification for most of them as dominant. Because most of the submissive males that I have met in my journey, actually are very, respectful. It's very funny how the difference between a submissive woman and a submissive guy are, just in terms of just I don't know how somehow gender does play a role in that. But most of the explicit images are coming from men, and most of the men sending them do identify on the dominant side of life, which should be a red flag if somebody's a dominant and they are obviously not respecting you enough to start a conversation with their wang. Um, but it gives that in a twisted way. It gives the sender a sense of um, dominance, I guess if you could put it that way. They're shocking. Like you might see a DM in your inbox from someone you've never spoken to, and you are probably not thinking, gentleman sausage pitcher, and so you have a bit of shock, discomfort, maybe even makes you feel a little humiliated that they're sending this sort of, thing. But in the digital world, uh, with boundaries being blurred, it kind of, in the sender's mind, might be a way that they're thinking they're exerting their wonderful alpha dominance. As twisted as that logic is, it is part of the logic behind some of it. And also, of course, with the digital age, we have all sorts of issues that have come into play with maintaining boundaries and respecting boundaries of others. Um, we have desensitized the world in a way with our internet porn infatuation that the whole world seems to have, and now we have sites that allows anybody, which is not a bad thing. I mean, if you've got the self-confidence to rock it and to do fans only or only fans, whatever it is, or whatever, where you can be your own, you can turn yourself into a porn star with your smartphone. That's all you need to become a porn star nowadays. And if you can do it, that's fantastic. But that same level of openness and sexuality, if you will, has kind of desensitized a lot of people. And it, with the blurring of boundaries, it makes things challenging so that some people totally don't understand where boundaries exist or that people have boundaries and have skewed things to the point that they think sending their gentleman's sausage to your inbox is a acceptable way to show their interest. And then finally, um, I also think there's some men out there who lack good communication skills. However, they sort of use their gentleman's sausage like a fisherman uses a worm, since they can't use good communication to say, "Hey, I like you." They send a picture of their worm, if you will, waggling, and hoping that you'll be like a hungry fish and bite. I don't know, but it's just it's very very, especially in the DS world, when you do get um, even if you do enjoy them, and there are people who do enjoy the receiving the unsolicited pictures, whether it's the genitalia of your choice that you like to receive. There are people that do enjoy receiving them, but just understand that the person sending them is violating basically all four pillars of the DS lifestyle. So it should be a red flag right off the bat. Now, red flags brings to mind something, and we talk about red flags very often in this lifestyle. I know we've talked about them on this podcast before, but a red flag we typically think of as being something that's horrible, or that oh, it's a red flag. We need to step away from this person. There's a red flag waving. No, red flags can mean run, Forrest, run away from this person. Red flag, danger, stranger danger, all those sorts of things. But also, red flags can be nothing more than okay, this red flag is waving. This is an area we need to communicate more about because I need to understand where they're coming from. It could be a personal thing. Red flags come at us, our past, for example, will color our future if we allow it to. And so sometimes we see a red flag when a person answers a question or says something, for example, that our ex might say, or answers a question in the way an ex answered or would answer it. So even if their answer wasn't the same, the way it causes a red flag, which means we need to have more of a conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean run away because doesn't isn't necessarily that big of a deal. It could just be our own internalization. But the whole four pillars and the unsolicited booby pictures that I got led my mind into red flags. And so I went through and researched and came up with 50 common red flags. Now, these don't all mean run away from the person, although some of them definitely do mean run, and run as fast as you can away from this person. But sometimes they can just mean you need to have a deeper conversation about what it is. But for many, they are, this is not a safe situation, or this is not a potential good person. We need to stay away from them, especially when it comes to all things BDSM related. So, without further ado, let's roll into 50 very common red flags in the DS lifestyle. The first one, kind of number one on my list, is lack of communication. And lack of communication can be anything from, sometimes we meet an amazing person and we just don't communicate the same way. They communicate differently than I communicate. So it could be seen as a lack of communication, or it can be, and this is where it really gets important to understand, if it's somebody who avoids discussing boundaries, they can't discuss their desires or the things that they want in a relationship. They just like avoid all of that. That can be a red flag. Um, a huge red flag, and this is a run, Forest, run. These next uh, couple are ignoring safe words. Safe words are really our last line of defense. Um, and most people think of safe words as being something a submissive needs to have, and absolutely that's the case. But safe words also, if you're a dominant, think of safe words. They are protecting you, the dominant, as well. So encourage, if you are a dominant and you have your submissive partner, encourage your submissive partner to feel safe using their safe words or gestures, because they keep everyone involved safe and also help build trust. So safe words, use is super important. And if you run across somebody who doesn't believe in safe words, run. It's that simple. Um, Kind of going along with that, because if you're going to ignore safe words, that same person is ignoring consent. Because if you're ignoring safe words, your red or stop safe word is withdrawing consent. So if somebody's going to ignore safe words, they are going to disregard consent, which is huge red flag, which puts the person at risk. So that is a runaway, stay away red flag. Then something else that happens, and this is not just a dominant twat waffle thing, because submissives do it too and can do it. But anyone who uses pressure or tries to coerce a partner, and once again, it kind of goes back to that consent, because you know when you give consent, it has to be given, has to be freely given. So if you're pressuring or trying to do anything along those lines, it is a consent violation. So that's a huge red flag. And then, of course, we have isolation. Anytime a partner or prospective partner tries to distance you from your friends, your family, your support network, it is a huge red flag and one of a potential abuser. Let's call it what it is. It's a warning sign. On the side of the road, it would say, abuser potential ahead. So that's a huge one. And even when it comes to the lifestyle, you will find people who perhaps have engaged in disreputable lifestyle relationships in the past. They will not want a partner to be a part of the community, whether it's online or in person. They will try to isolate them from the community as a whole, because then that partner doesn't see how they are manipulating and misusing the lifestyle. Another red flag is somebody who refuses to learn or has an unwillingness to learn. The lifestyle is constantly evolving, always changing. There's new ways to do things safely, new ways to talk about, consent, or to talk about or develop new negotiation skills. Um, and one of the fun things about a DS relationship is you can do fun, kinky things together. Like you can take I know, in the BDSM world, we're a bunch of kind of nerds. We like to learn about it. So a partner who's unwilling to learn about new things in the lifestyle and doesn't want to say attend a class together is a red flag. Another thing that's a red flag, and we face it, jealousy happens to any of us and all of us. Jealousy normally is a case where we feel protective perhaps or threatened by someone, and what jealousy normally indicates is that something is wrong with us and we need to talk to our partner about how we're feeling. However, when it reaches red flag levels is when it's extreme. When that jealousy leads to possessiveness, control issues, which can lead to pressure and coercion, and it steamrolls into the lack of consent. It just it goes down that road. So extreme jealousy is an extreme red flag. Uh, Another red flag is unrealistic expectations. Um, let's face it, we're all unique as humans. And one of the things you see in the lifestyle is people, no matter where you reside in the slash, that have unrealistic expectations about a lifestyle relationship. A common way it's seen on the dominant side is where the dominant has a pre-made list of rules or guidelines that they are going to enact when they find their next submissive partner. It's not, hey, here are the things that I've liked in the past as far as relationship structure. It's my next submissive will follow these 100 rules, and here they are. It's an unrealistic expectation because we're all unique. And those things that dominant may like and may want in the future may not fit their ideal partner. They are putting unrealistic expectations on their partner. And submissives will do it too because they will have expectations that a dominant is going to come in and just lead them and know magically how to lead them. Well, that's an unrealistic expectation because in order for that dominant to lead you, you have to have a destination in mind. Whether your destination is, a landscape where you're the landscape model where you're picking and choosing the things that you want, or you are an escalator person where it's, okay, we're going to date, then we're going to move in together, and then, this, then this, then this. However that works, you need to have your expectations be realistic. Another red flag is mood swings. Now, we all have good days, bad days, and going to have mad days, but mood swings, when they are intense and dramatic and drastic, it can be very very hard, and a red flag. It could mean something where perhaps the person that you're getting to know has a mental health concern that you need to talk about, or it could be they're using their mood swings or using them to try and manipulate and coerce you. So it's a red flag and something to have a conversation with. And another red flag, and this is something as a dominant I see more than probably submissive see from dominance, but it happens on all sides of the slash. And that's people out there who are using DS for financial exploitation. And why I say I see that as a dominant more often than a submissive would see that is that there are people out there who are playing the role of submissive. They will be submissive as long as you are paying for their car or paying for their apartment, or they're using basically submission as a tool to have their finances taken care of, which is a red flag. That's not to talk about being a financial dominatrix or dominant. That's a whole another realm of kink, but I'm talking about people who are using the lifestyle to try and achieve financial freedom, I guess, if you will. Um, and another red flag are people that will deliberately blur boundaries in DS. A submissive that will try to go from submissive to dominant, or dominant from the dominant who becomes submissive. It just blurs the roles, doesn't want to build and define lifestyle roles, because that is an important part of building a relationship, is to define the roles and how they work for that partnership. Then this is the best part of the lifestyle, and there are so many people who unfortunately miss out because, well, they just miss out, and it's aftercare. Aftercare is one of it's hey, the frosting on the top of the layer cake that is DS play for me, and aftercare is the bomb. But there are so many people who want the play and will claim they want the relationship, but when it's done, they're done. You know, the playtime is done and they're putting on their shoes to run for the door. Aftercare, unless it's casual, unless you are playing with a trusted friend, um, and if it's just play with somebody that's a trusted individual, then aftercare needs to be something you negotiate just like you negotiate your play. However, if you are in or building a partnership, aftercare is essential. And somebody who ignores aftercare in that situation is a huge red flag. Then there are the critics. I'm sure that some of you listening are critical of some of the things that I've said already today. But there are people who use criticism and constant criticism to erode the self-esteem really of a person, which when you do that, you create an unhealthy dynamic. So the constant critic is a red flag. Now, dominants are also known to like to make decisions. I like to make choices that are consensual and negotiated and within the realm of the box of, okay, Edward, you are the dominant in this relationship. Within this box, you can make all the choices. Fabulous. I love that. However, there are people who, of course, misuse that part of the dominant role and just try to use dominance to unilaterally make all the choices for their partner. And when they do that, that should be, it needs to be a red flag for you, especially if you're submissive, that this person is just trying to over control your life because that can lead into manipulative, coercive isolation, the whole, a potential abuser ahead. So that needs to be a red flag. I'm sure we've talked about it before, but anyone who wants to isolate you from the greater DS community, whether it's online, in person, or a mixture thereof, that is a huge, huge red flag. Why do they not want you to grow in the lifestyle? Why do they want to keep you from obtaining information? Um, you know, it is, they may not want to cut you off at that point from your friends and your family and coworkers and all that stuff, but isolating from the DS community is often a precursor to that. So that's something to look out for. Of course, we have consent violations. I think we've talked about that before. I apologize for the double whammy there, but it's here in my notes. So I'm just rolling with it, and it came out of my mouth before I realized it, and so yeah, we just had a double whammy there. Um, you know how people say, "Well, I didn't lie, I just didn't tell the whole truth." Well, that's that is a red flag because yeah, withholding information can be, for me, equal to being dishonest. Well, I didn't tell the whole truth. What I told you was truthful. I just didn't tell you the rest of the story. Anybody remember Paul Harvey? And now you know the rest of the story. The people that we meet, and we meet them all the time, that are information withholders. They don't share the full story, perhaps because the full story doesn't necessarily make them look good. And I will admit that I've done it in the past. I've withheld bits and pieces, and I think we all have, especially when we're getting to know somebody. We may not want to tell the rest of the story because the rest of the story may not shine such a sparkling light upon ourselves, but there are people who use the withholding of information as a way to control and to manipulate um, people. And basically, at that point, we are running into dishonesty, which, of course, is a red flag. And this one shouldn't be said, but I'll say it anyways. There are those people in the lifestyle who use the lifestyle to manipulate. They guilt trip, they gaslight, and obviously this is a clear warning sign. Um, Speaking of gaslighting, how many of you know that gaslighting actually comes from a old movie? Oh, I want to say it was 1920s era, maybe it's 30s, but it's called The Gaslight. So if you see it on Turner Classic Movies, tune in because that's the movie that this all comes from. And gaslighting, just to be clear, is when somebody manipulates you in a way to make you feel like you're going crazy. That's gaslighting. For some reason, you see it a lot online as where gaslighting is oh now I can't think of the term. Where people just stop talking, where they boy, I know what that term is. You know what that term is. They just all of a sudden up and stop talking to you. So a lot of times you'll see that somehow referred to as gaslighting when it's not. It's yeah, yeah. Total brain wave there. It's gone. So you know what I mean. So please excuse my mental faux pas there. Um, Submissives, a red flag that you need to be aware of are the dominants who overemphasize punishment. I've always jokingly referred to them. There is I'm not sure if it's Marvel, but it's a superhero, and he's called the Punisher. He has this little logo type thing that a gentleman here who owns a few restaurants is a big fan of. And while I am not a pilot, I occasionally go up with a friend who is a pilot and lets me. Um, he's also an instructor, so I'm not like I'm some in the, if you're in the area, you have to worry about me at the controls with some crazy person who doesn't care. But I can successfully take a plane up. You know, I can take off in the plane. I can fly the plane. I can line up and I can do the approach. I am working on the whole controlled crash, which, by the way, that's what landing is, kind of a controlled crash. Working on that. I'm not there yet. But anyways, the gentleman here is a huge Punisher fan, and he owns quite a bit of land. And when he mows, he actually doesn't mow a section of his land that's not that's kind of behind his house, so that when you fly over, you see the Punisher's logo. So it's kind of just a cool little side story there. But there are many D types who, like, their whole existence is seems to be about how they're going to punish their submissive. They have the pre-made rules and the pre-made punishments. You break rule number 7, that triggers punishment 101 or 149, dominance pick. But it's a non-healthy thing. I guess a better way to look at it is, if they're looking at the negatives, so much looking at the negatives, are they going to even be able to find positivity because they're all focused on the negative? Because let's face it, screwing up, making mistakes are not where we want to focus any relationship. Whether, I mean, can you imagine a friend that all they do is nag you about mistakes? It wouldn't be a much of a lasting friendship, I would think. Um, then we have those in the lifestyle who are disrespectful. The Once again, like we started with, the gentleman sausage and the unsolicited gentleman sausage sender and the unsolicited booby senders. Lack of respect, huge red flag. Then there are those that ignore health and safety. Um, we all need to have our safety protocols and understand the risks that we're taking. And there are those who just ignore them. And so there's all of that. Then we have those that don't value our privacy. It could be as simple as wanting to snoop in your phone. I am a person that, when I find my next partner, I look forward to having the relationship being where you want to see my phone. There you go. There's my phone. Have at it. Go through it all. Nothing there you can't see. It's that person that snoops, invades privacy, that's always looking for something. If they're always looking for something, they're going to find it. So yeah, huge red flag. That's not something normally that conversation can fix. But if you've ever had a relationship with the privacy invader, um, I think it's like a maybe a new video game that's coming out as a sequel to Space Invaders. But the Privacy Invader, that's something that is not something you can just talk away. But it is something that you want to be aware of if you've gone through a relationship with a privacy invader, because it could impact how you see a future partner. Rather than somebody who has a question and misunderstand it. So it's something to be aware of. Negotiation is incredibly important in DS. We know this. Everything happens with negotiation. Even consent is all a negotiation. Everything in the lifestyle is negotiated, consented to. So somebody who can't, won't, or neglects negotiation is somebody who more than likely is going to quickly morph and go into consent violation land, which is a huge red flag. So negotiations and how they're handled, or if they're neglected, very important, very much a potential red flag. Then there are those, let's face it, we all try to avoid conflict. Most people try to, most reasonable people, in my opinion, try to avoid conflict. But conflict happens. And when it happens and it isn't resolved, continuously things are swept under a rug, swept under a rug, swept under a rug. Eventually, all that is going to come to life under that rug and come back to haunt us. So, an individual who, when we're getting to know them, who has issues resolving conflicts, that's a potential red flag. So, we would want to have a conversation about that. Of course, anybody who doesn't practice, the whole consent and creating balanced, negotiated, consensual power dynamics, huge red flag. You'll see some dominants who are kind of on the abusive side, that are on the abusive side, will try to create unbalanced power dynamics in their relationship. So that's a red flag to run away from. And then we have substance abuse. Substance abuse, obviously, is something that's treatable. We can seek treatment for substance abuse. Even our vanilla friends, our vanilla family, we've all pretty much, I would imagine, seen how substance abuse can wreak havoc in someone we care about or in our own lives. So it's obviously a red flag and something that needs to be either worked on or um, avoided depending on the situation. So that's something to be on the lookout for. There are those who disregard our emotional well-being. They might be very in tune to our physical well-being, but if they neglect our emotional side, we have a red flag. Um, and then, of course, we have the people that use intimidation and threats. And this is not just a dominant thing. You would perhaps assume that intimidation and threatening behavior comes from a dominant. Um, Submissives can be equally as bad there. Think for a second the way a submissive could use intimidation and threats. Um, you spanked me last weekend and left a bruise on my bum. So if you don't do this, I'm going to call the police and claim abuse. And look, I still have the bruise, and we took pictures of it, so I have, it's documented. So now you have to do it because, if not, I'm going to threaten you with law enforcement. And so there's intimidation and threats that do happen in the lifestyle, which definitely needs to be a red flag. That's not something I don't believe you can negotiate or discuss or fix anything that's a run away from. Another thing that's in the lifestyle, which kind of goes with the whole education thing, is the inflexible person. The lifestyle is always growing, always changing. And so somebody who is inflexible is not going to make a good lifestyle partner because we're all changing, we're all flexing, we're all growing, we're all doing all that good stuff every day, every second of every day. And when you have the person that is not bendable, that isn't flexible, we're going to, even if they're perfect in the minute, in 6 months, that inflexibility is going to cause nothing but problems for us because we are going to have outgrown them as a partner, potential partner. Then there are those who use guilt and shame, just like somebody who uses intimidation and threats. Guilt and shame, people use those to manipulate, and that needs to be a red flag. And that, once again, in my opinion, isn't something you can discuss and walk away. And another wonderful little red flag are the um, dominants who try to get their submissives, especially in public, to expose themselves or expose coerce their submissive into showing perhaps just the dominant or perhaps showing the world, um, naughty bits, the unwanted public exposure thing. And it happens, and it needs to be a red flag. Um, then there are dominants who will unilaterally change the rules and rules and guidelines, that whole structure of a DS relationship. It needs to be negotiated mutually and agreed to mutually. It can't just be dominant thumping their chest like they're King Kong and climbing the Empire State Building and saying, this is the rule, this is the structure. It cannot be unilateral. And they can't change. It can't be something that changes on the fly to suit the whims of the dominant. That is it's yikes. It's a get away from them. Then there are those who, and for better or worse, I think once you've reached a certain age, we've all run into people that are emotional manipulators. Emotional manipulation is a red flag. It's something that we need to treat as a warning sign of everything else, because if they're willing to manipulate our emotions or try to, then there's going to be nothing but problems ahead. Then we have a lack of transparency. There are some people who, for whatever reason, can't or won't be transparent with who they are or what's going on in their lives. Just this morning, I logged into FetLife and I had posted a writing on FetLife. There was a person who clicked the like button, that the name seemed familiar to me, and I clicked on it, and it was somebody from my local community had liked it, which is always nice when it's somebody in the local community. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen them in a bunch, and they liked it. But then I noticed their profile, and for the longest time, they had listed themselves as single, and now they had changed their profile to reflect that um, they were married and looking for a DS connection that was not ethically being done on the side, if you will. And so that kind of brought to mind the lack of transparency that many people out there, um, unfortunately, it happens in the lifestyle. There's many people that are not transparent about their lives. So that of course is something to be concerned about. Um, and then we have body shaming, and and it's not just a male to female body shaming. Body shaming affects all people of all sexual orientations and of all genders. And for a gentleman who is working on their body positivity, it is something that can, let's face it, uh, the wrong words at the wrong time can do some damage. So how somebody treats your body. I always think that a partner should kind of treat your body way better than you treat it yourself, because we are, I'm sure even supermodels have body positivity issues. And yeah, so I think we need to look for partners who are uplifting with our body positivity rather than those who will use it to shame us, which will more than likely be a blow to our self-esteem, which can make us more easily manipulated, and you can see how that goes down the line, which is not positive. Um, then there are those that we meet in life and the lifestyle that will minimize their concerns. We will bring up something that's concerning to us, and they will be dismissive of it. Now, if I'm bringing up a concern, you might think to yourself or even roll your eyes like, oh my God, I can't believe this is a concern. I can't believe this is a thing for him. Why is he, this is, oh my God, I can't believe this is, we all have those moments when we're getting to know somebody like, oh my God, I can't believe, but, we all have those, I can't believe this is an issue moments. Whether it happens when we're getting to know or later on, it happens. But the thing is, if our partner or potential partner is bringing this to us, it is a legit concern for them. So we need to address it as a legitimate concern, because if they just dismiss it, they're being dismissive of us and our boundaries, and it is a red flag. Um, Another area which is important is somebody who ignores our health needs. Somebody who, look, let's face it, as we get older, we develop health needs. Unfortunately, you know, like for example, I am this summer working on pedal biking to improve getting myself in better shape, to be healthier. And so somebody who would ignore my need or my desire to be healthier um, would be potentially harmful. So it would be a red flag. But, as we age, everyone develops health concerns, and some of us have them, even when we're young people, and they stay with us all of our lives. So anyone who is not encouraging and helps us positively handle any of our health needs, whether it's physical or mental, that needs to be a red flag, and we need to get away from them because it's not a positive person to be in our lives. Anybody who wouldn't be positive about supportive of our health is not somebody we need to have around. And then there are emotional withdrawers. And I will admit, um, yeah, this is something that I've struggled with. I can emotionally withdraw. Um, it's something that I've worked on to do better at, and I believe I have. I'm not perfect, but I can emotionally withdraw. And in the past, that's obviously not a wonderful way to solve a problem when a partner says, hey, this is bothering me, and it causes me to emotionally pull back rather than engage. And so, knowing that, learning from my mistakes, um, it's a wonderful thing to be knowledgeable about. So, but there are people who, unlike me, who didn't realize that this is something that's going on, that didn't realize this was an area that I needed to address personally, that I needed to get the tools in my toolbox so I wouldn't emotionally withdraw when a trying situation happened in a relationship. Um, yeah, that it is a red flag. Those that that their, support and affection um, are, something that can be withdrawn when things go bumpy. Um, so I hopefully that kind of makes sense. It's a hard thing to talk about sometimes when you're talking to the world about something that you had have had an issue with in the past. Um, so hopefully that makes some sense. Another area to be mindful of are we talked about the criticizers before, and then there are those that are continuous with it, and they use the criticism to belittle, to try and damage your self-esteem, and I think we fully talked about that now that my memory is rolling better. But yeah, anytime we have somebody that's hypercritical and continuous with it, it's not hypercritical in a moment and then it's gone, or using the hypercritical moments to manipulate, but like it's the you know how we approach an issue with a partner says a lot. And so, yeah, it is a red flag when somebody is more critical than positive and all that good stuff. So it is something that we need to, in my opinion, distance ourselves from. Um, in DS, we also have those that disregard safe practices. They are out there. They're on all sides of the slash, dominant switch, submissive, and just those that are, playing because they enjoy the kinky sex part of it. No matter why you're here, how you enjoy the lifestyle, there are those who put the thrill, I would say, their own personal gratification above being safe. And so it is a huge red flag when somebody disregards safety practices for their own personal gain. And it could be somebody who is, oh, um, yeah, really thirsty for the lifestyle. They've had a little taste and now they're so thirsty that they are just jonesing and they'll do whatever needs to be done to get their fix. So it's very important that if we see a friend get thirsty for lifestyle practices, that we be a friend to them and remind them to be safe about it. And if we run into somebody who is pursuing more than friendships with us, or even is a friend and is wanting to engage in some friendly play that is willing to put their thirst above their safety, it is a huge, huge red flag. Um, there are, of course, we talked about abusers. There's physical abusers, there's verbal abusers. Obviously, those are red flags. And abuse is something that is incredibly hard for somebody who is abused or being abused to leave. So it's very important that we be our best selves and support our friends, our associates who are in those situations and do what we can to empower them to leave. And also, if you start to see signs of those, understand that abuse is a red flag, and if you can, exit it immediately. Reach out, ask for help, because there is tons of help to escape abuse. Um, and I know it's not an easy thing to do. I have never been on the abused side or the abusive world, but unfortunately, I've seen friends struggle with it, and yeah, it's horrible. So it's something that as a community, I think we need to support those that are in those situations so that they can escape them, and that also we keep our eyes peeled so that we don't overlook the red flags to find ourselves trapped in one of those abusive places. Um, I admit to having a praise kink. I admit it. I enjoy it. I think most of us enjoy being praised, um, and it's awesome. However, there are people who will manipulate their praise and use our desire to be praised to manipulate us. So be aware of the manipulative praisers because, believe it or not, that is a red flag that's out there. So to be very, very mindful of that. Um, and finally, the last two things that I've got um, in this whole wonderful world is those that use shame as a punishment. We shouldn't be. There are people who have humiliation kinks and fetishes and obviously done consensually. That's their jam. It's not for me. It's a yuck for me, but for those people that enjoy them, and it's a yum for them, done consensually. That's their thing, and rock on and enjoy it. But there are those that will shame and try to use shame to manipulate or to punish. And this is harmful, and this is a red flag. It is not somebody who is not kind of going into that humiliation fetish kink area, but is simply using shame to manipulate. So that is something that we need to recognize as a red flag and to step away from. And finally, we have lack of accountability. And look, we live in a world where nobody is at fault for anything, right? Just look at, you know, almost any court case in the world. Um, we'll look at the Orange Future Felon of America. Um, Nothing in, and I'm going to pick on him, and you will probably get political beliefs out of this, and so be it. The former president, Donald Trump, is never and has never ever been accountable for anything in his life. Just ask him, listen to him. Everything that goes wrong and goes bump in Donald Trump's life is somebody else's fault. Either somebody is engaging in a witch hunt against him, or one of his underlings didn't do something properly. Nothing is Donald Trump's fault. Now, that whole mentality is not something that's unique to the orange former president. Um, it is across the board with many people in this world. For whatever reason, it's never their fault anymore. And so, no matter where we are in life or the lifestyles, especially in the lifestyle, it's a red flag when we run into people who and it's also a sign of narcissism. And by the way, when we say narcissism, everyone goes, "Oh, dominant. Yep, that's a dominant thing." No, submissives can do it too. Switches can do it. Just those kinktastic people here for the kinky fun can be that too. But stay away from those who refuse to take accountability for their actions. We've all screwed up. We've all made mistakes. And if you run into somebody who when they are confronted with a mistake or talk about a mistake, but it's always somebody else's fault. Oh, yes, well, you see, that wasn't my fault because anytime that continuously happens, it's a red flag. So, and I also somewhat apologize for the little descent into politics, but it was such an easy example. And I know that if you are a devotee of the former president, that what I said you were highly offended because, yes, he can do no wrong. Um, it's that whole lack of accountability thing is a red flag and it's persuasive in the world. So all of this started from the craziness of unsolicited boobs in my email box. And I know it's kind of crazy how unsolicited boobs in my email box can get me to talk for an hour, and how the four pillars of DS can lead to the craziness of red flags in this lifestyle. It's just, see, good things come out of boobs. I mean, boobs that I found to be disrespectful and obviously not a good form of communication led to me having a hour-long communication with all of you. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. No matter where you listen, I hope that you will click, if you haven't already, the follow button so you never miss an episode. And new episodes of Chatting with the Lightkeeper do arrive every Tuesday morning, bright and early, New York City time. So with that in mind, I will wish everyone a good day, and I look forward to chatting with you again next week.